So today we're talking about financial independence or retiring without or with compromises. Fellow investors, bonjour. This is Mike Leroux, founder of Dividend Stocks Rocks and passionate investor. You're listening to the Dividend Guy blog podcast where I and my co-host Véronique will help you invest with more conviction so you can enjoy your retirement. Dividend Growth investors, bonjour. Mike Leroux here. I hope you are doing well and that you have your winter coat on because it's getting frisky outside. I am with my co-host Vero. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mike. And actually, as we speak and as we record, it's like still October and we are about to hit the Halloween day. So I hope that your kids are ready, even though they're getting old. I mean, yeah, they don't go trick or treating anymore, right?
Actually, the funniest part is my two oldest kids. They're actually, one is an adult now, but they were just like, how come we don't have candies? And I'm like, dude, like, just like go buy yourself some candies, you know? But yeah, they're still expecting something. They're not going to get anything because, I mean, you know, they have to grow up and they just have to go to like the Tig Géant, like a Giant Tanker. I think Giant Tanker is like, yeah, it exists across Canada. Anyways, like go to Walmart or whatever, get some candies. But yeah.
All right. So, Mike, the FIRE movement, because this is what we will talk about today.
Are we?
Yes, we will. We will. So the FIRE movement has existed for a few years. But this way of living especially attracts people in their 30s or less. However, it is only made for some. So today we will suggest other options.
Yeah, the FIRE movement is fascinating. And when you think about that without like considering what it like all the moves that you have to make to reach that, retiring at like in your 40s or like early 50s and just chill, that sounds kind of like appealing for a lot of us, right? But it comes with a lot of sacrifice, and we're going to tackle this. We're going to tackle also the fact that what happens if you do not live that long, or what's going to happen after you're 40 and you retire. I mean, sounds a bit young to go for a bridge game.
Okay, so first, FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. But concretely, what does it mean to be FIRE?
So, for the financial independence part, I would say that you don't need a job. Ideally, you live from your portfolio, or maybe you have like rental income. So, it's the idea that you don't have to wake up every morning, work for a boss that you don't like, do a job that you don't like, which is not your case, of course. So, that's why you don't like FIRE movement. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so it's the idea of like living from getting your income passively from something else. So like I said, portfolio, rental properties, inheritance, I don't know, annuities, royalties. If you did a few good songs, maybe that's going to happen. And then the second part would be to retire early. So retire early, I guess it's like anything in finance. It could depend on perception. I would say if you retire before 50, 55, that would be considering early retirement. Then we could argue for a long time, because today the thing is life expectancy has expanded so much that even if you retire at 60, it's relatively early in the sense that your chances are you're going to live another 35 years, maybe 40 years, who knows, right? I mean, you could reach 100. So that time frame tends to change from one person to another. But I would really consider, for the sake of this episode, if you can retire before 50, that is definitely early retirement.
All right, so the idea is seductive. That's the least we can say. But I'm still wondering, can it impact the economy? Like we've been saying for years that the population is aging, that we're short on labor. So can we afford as a society that about 10 to 20% of the population is FIRE?
Yeah, over the past 2 years, I've mentioned this into several of my newsletter at Dividend Stocks Rock, helping my members to manage their portfolio, where the unemployment rate will be kind of like artificially stable or low because more people are leaving the labor market. and as people are joining it. So we already have, like as you mentioned, this problem where we have more retirees than young people taking over those jobs. So what if like most of them don't work or stop working
Hmm.
after 20 years? So it comes with a valid question, but when you think about all the sacrifices, and we're going to get into this episode, I don't think we're going to see 10 to 20% of population reaching fire, because it's really
Hmm.
hard and it requires a lot of will. It's a bit like what we saw with the big scare, that everybody would take Ozempic, they would lose appetite, lose weight, and stop eating Doritos and drink Pepsi Cola. So we saw PepsiCo in 23 having a really rough time because there was a lot of news saying, well, everybody's going to be on Ozempic and nobody's gonna buy like junk foods or snacks or drink soft drinks. But that's not exactly what's happening right now. Yes, some
Hmm.
people are doing that, and that's, I mean, good for them if it works for them. I'm not here to say if it's good or not, but the thing is, not everybody wants to get onto medicine to achieve a goal. Same way, most people will not be able to reach fire one way or another. Like maybe they don't
Hmm.
want it, maybe they want it, but they don't want to make the effort that comes with it. So I'm not really worried about 20% of our population reaching it. If it would be the case, definitely it would be a problem, though.
All right, so typically, fire requires people to save at least 25% of their annual expenses. So, fire, we could say, took its roots from a frugal lifestyle, right?
Well, when you think about that, you start working between the age of 2025, and the goal is to stop working by the age of 50. So you really have like less than 30 years, in all
Hmm.
things considered, to save enough money and live for the next 30, 40, maybe 50 years if you retire really early. So that requires a lot of money to be put aside. So, of course, if you do not intend to live frugally, you better make a lot of money, because that's not going to happen. So, usually the fire movement comes from frugal people that have this ability to save like sometimes 50, 60% of their income, put that into either like index fund or manage their own portfolio, and benefit from like the power of compounding interest at a very young age with a very high saving rate. So when you combine that together, yes, you could reach to build at least 1 to 2 million, I guess, by the age of 50. And since you live frugally, you also need less money to retire on. So it's easier to have a portfolio that generates enough income if you need 30 or $40,000 to live, than if you need 50, 60, or $70,000 a year.
Okay, so with inflation and higher interest rates, achieving such low expenses may seem more challenging. And, like, personally, if I think about my life with a family of five, every family member does a sport or two. So it's almost impossible to reach if we maintain this kind of lifestyle. So, who do you think fire is made for?
Well, it's all about decisions, right? It's all about
Hmm.
sacrifices. There is a TV show that I love to watch with my wife. It's called La Belle Vie, so it's of course made in Quebec. But the idea behind that show is a guy that lived a van life. So he was living in his van for like 6 7 years, and now he's going across Canada to meet people that have different lifestyles, like off the grid, or in community, or building like ecologic like properties, and everything that is alternative, a bit off track, which is
Hmm.
super interesting, and it is very inspiring as well. But what you realize is everything is possible. However, it requires a lot of sacrifices and different choices. I mean, in one of the last show, there was a family of four, and they were living on their bicycle. So, and I'm pretty sure you can picture your three kids, and I mean the children were like 9 and 7, so like about the age that you have. Like plus, you would have to deal with a teenager, but they had a house that they like rent most of the time, and then from time to time they would like take a break, like a 3 months or a 6 months break at their home, but for the rest of it. And now they were on a 2 year consecutive trip in BC, just driving, just cycling around, enjoying nature and sleeping in tents and doing homeschool. So and I see your face right now and you're just like, that's not gonna happen here, buddy. But
No, not at all.
it's really
At
about making different choices.
at the moment you say homeschool, I'm done. Like it's not gonna happen. I,
Yeah.
I love
So
my kids, but I don't have that patience.
and I can share that with you. The year that I spent in the RV, the most difficult part was not to drive across those crazy roads or to not speak Spanish, being in Central America, or no, like having no mechanical skills and still having to repair my RV. It was really to homeschool my children. So we're on the same team here. But yeah, so it really depends on how bad you want to retire. And I guess if you really dislike your job, maybe it's going to drive you to
Hmm.
make extreme choices, or maybe you just don't care and it's all right. I mean, everybody's different. So I just that watching this TV show kind of like remind me that there are so many different ways to be happy in a different lifestyle.
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm.
investing. There are so many ways, so many strategies that work and will help you reach your financial goals, that you don't have to be a dividend growth investor to make it. You don't have to invest in index funds to make it. I mean, you could have a financial advisor pay 2% MERs and still make it through. So there are several ways to reach your financial goals. And if you're not willing to tell your children that you're going to homeschool them and they're not going to play sports anymore, like, well, there you go. You have to work for a few more years.
Let's take a quick pause to invite listeners to download the DSR Recession Proof Portfolio Workbook. This guide will empower you as an investor so you can stop doubting your decision and invest with more conviction. What type of tools will they get, Mike?
Well, actually, I created this workbook in 2020 during the pandemic crash to help my members to cut the noise and invest with more conviction. It was a tough period and a lot of investors had a lot of questions. It's a workbook, not a book. It means that there's plenty of questions over there to help you evolve as an investor. And every year I'm upgrading it, adding pages, adding content, and make it more complete. So when you know the answer, you don't stress about the question. And this is how you can invest with more conviction.
The DSR Recession Proof Portfolio Workbook is totally free. Visit thedividendguyblog.com/workbook and download it now. If you already used it, hit the comments and let us know how did it help you. Again, thedividendguyblog.com/workbook. Mike, I know you will relate to me regarding the next point too. So, you know that I lost a friend last year because of breast cancer, and she was only 39. Like, this should never happen, but sometimes it
Mm.
does. So, I have the feeling, of course, like you've said, I need to work and save, and I enjoy that, but I also need to enjoy life now as I'm healthy. So that means, like, to me, enjoying family vacations or trips, visiting restaurants, inviting friends over, maybe renting a cabin, planning to own a horse. Like, this is not a simple thing. So this creates some kind of distortion between what I want and the fire movement. Like, what is the fire movement? So do you agree with me?
Yeah, and there is that. I mean, when you look with insight and you look back, if you're 70 and you retire at like 40, everything makes sense, right? Because you work very hard, you saved on everything, but then you got to enjoy life for a very long time. On the other side, as you said, if you pass away in your late 30s or in your 40s, you have not seen any of the
Hmm.
results, any of the sacrifice that you've made. And when I took a sabbatical at the age of 35, I lived the most incredible year of my life. And when I came back, I told my wife I could die. Like, I could die in a sense where I'm fully satisfied of what I did with the time I had. Of course, I still wanted to live, But
Mhm.
knowing that if I had to die the next year, I would be content with the time that I had. And that created that emergency to live now and enjoy life now, which kind of like goes pretty much against having a pretty decent budget. so so on the one side, a lot of people told me when I was about to leave or when I came back that this trip, assuming my age and the power of compounding interest and the impact that it had on my career, was probably the worst financial decision I could have ever made. And I cannot really disagree with them. And I mean, instead of making money and saving and investing at the age of 35, I literally burned $84,000. So that was not a good move financially speaking. But
Mhm.
from the perspective of your friend that passed away way too young, I definitely made the right choice. So I
Right.
guess it's about creating the balance that fits for you. And that balance will be completely different for your neighbor, for your friend, for your family. So it's not about comparing. It's not about saying that your strategy or your way is better, but really, I think what is really, really important is to ask yourself, are you happy with what you've done in the past few years with the time that you had? And if you're not, maybe it's time to revise your goals and revise what you do. Because if you're just thinking, oh, I'm going to be fine when I retire at the age of 65, that's it's kind of like going on the opposite way, where we all know stories of people that were about to retire or retired and then died the next day, which is also a tragedy. So trying to find that balance is really hard. But as long as you're happy with the year that just passed by, with the time that you had, I think that's the most important part.
Okay, so this is why also some people aim for the fat fire instead. So, what is fat fire and what are its pros and cons?
So fat fire is definitely my type of fire. I mean, this means that you retire early, but it is for high income earners. So if you've made a lot of money, so you were able to put a lot of money on the side as well, and now you can retire, but it's kind of like you are in the fire movement, but you just forget about the frugality of it. You just
Hmm.
made it through, made it big, and enjoy like the best scenario ever where you can spend more than $200,000 a year and still retire. So that would be crazy. But of course, unless you are a soccer player or like some like neurosurgeon or something like that, it's going to be a bit tougher for the most of us to reach that. But yeah, it's an extreme part of the fat fire of the fire movement, which is definitely not affordable to most people.
Another thing to consider is the sense of purpose. At DSR, we work with retirees every day, and we've seen many of them go back to work not for money, but to find a sense of purpose. So, an entire life on fire, like you said, like 40 years, 50 years of fire seems a bit boring to me. Of course, being financially independent, that's amazing. But one needs to plan this and fulfill this need, right?
Yeah, definitely. There are like two big component of retirement, regardless at the age of you retire. I think the first one is, of course, the financial component, which is super important because you want to make sure that you are able to retire and that your income will not be depleted before you pass away. But there is this other part where you need to prepare for retirement. You need to know what you're going to do. And
Hmm.
then even then, a few months ago, I told that story on the Moose on the Loose about Mr. Gravelin. So Mr. Gravelin is the guy who was like he was doing the snowplow for my driveway all winter.
Hmm.
He is now 82. So I moved in 14 years ago. He took care of my driveway and a couple of others. It was like not a big business. It was just like to spend some time and feeling useful and doing something that he loved. Like every morning he would jump into his small tractor, do his like small roundup of like maybe like 20 driveways or so, and then coming back home and then just enjoy his coffee and have the feeling that he did something useful for people. And just like going around, I remember I saw him like so many times, just like smiling at me, just being super happy to do something that matters, right? And this fall, he actually knocked on my door in September, and he he was I'm still getting emotional about this. He uh he had to tell me that he had to stop because he didn't have the health to keep on going. And you could feel that this poor man, he just wanted to come and do it, but at one point it was like just too hard to wake up in the morning. He was having like trouble with his vision, so it was just not safe for him to keep on doing it. But this is
Mm-hmm.
where you can understand. And he lives nearby. He has a nice house. Everything is nice. He doesn't do that for the money. Actually, he was like charging such a low price. It was really just because he wanted to see people, connect with people, and feel useful. So that part of retirement, I think, is probably even more important. Once you've dealt with the numbers, you need to be prepared to know what you want to do. And if you do not have like having a long list of like to dos and trips and bucket lists is fine, but having hobbies, having passion, having something to do to take your time is also super important. And if you're retiring in your 50s, then wow, you're going to have a lot of energy and a lot of time, so you better be prepared.
Mm-hmm. And besides, I mean, the younger you retire, you also need like some people around you, and this is probably the toughest part because everybody else is busy working, so you're like
Yeah.
alone for your ski trips and all that stuff. So, I mean, you need to really think about it. Um, so then, Mike, I mean, like with all that we said, are we only left with the traditional retirement where you work all your life to pay your bills, save some money, and enjoy life at like 60, 65, 70 years old? Like, what other solution would you bring to investors?
It cannot be just it, right? Like you retire at 40 or you retire at 75 and there's nothing in between, right?
Right.
Well, I think there are like different like colors to the fire movement or all the way down to the classic retirement. And one of them,
Mm-hmm.
for example, has been very popular by Mark from my own advisor. He called that FIWOOT, which is financial independence and work on your own terms. So Mark has enough money to retire today, but because he enjoy his life, because he enjoy what he does, his work, and probably people at work too, he decides every year to go to work. It's not an obligation, but rather, hey, I am enjoying myself working. I feel comfortable, I feel useful, and I get paid to do that, so it's even better. So that's also an interesting way to do it. And how he did it was, I mean, it's kind of like funny, but it is super simple. He started working early, he started saving, putting money aside, but without necessarily making huge sacrifices. So not necessarily like the fire movement, but something in between. So
Mm-hmm.
when he reached like around like late 40s, beginning of 50s, he was debt free. He still had like a good portfolio, enough to live on, and still continue to just boost that future retirement income, but he doesn't need to retire anymore. So just having this feeling of being free, I think would be more than enough for a lot of people. On my side, I decided to take a different type of approach, which I would call lifestyle design. That came after reading the 4 Hour Work Week, where I realized
Mm-hmm.
that I could do a lot more by buying myself some flexibility, making some different choices. I mean, when I came back from my sabbatical year, already the sabbatical year was amazing because I kind of like lived my next 26 years of vacation in 1 year altogether. So that was pretty cool. And then I still get to continue to keep working. And at that time, I decided not to go from a 9 to 5 job and quit my job as a private banker and work for DSR, like building this business to at first having the same, like actually a smaller salary than I had as a private banker, but
Mm-hmm.
more flexibility. So a path where I could work more hours more often. Sometimes I work on Sundays, but at the same time, I could also leave for Argentina, for Iceland, and then take spring break off, and then still have some days off during the holidays to enjoy time with my kids, even though I always have my laptop not too far away from me. So it is a bit of a different lifestyle. Today, if I did not have kids, I could sell everything and I would be kind of like that generation of digital nomad, and I could
Mm-hmm.
live like that very easily. I would be super happy too. But I'm super I'm blessed to have like 3 children, so I'm going to keep taking care of them instead.
I thought you were going to say, so I'm gonna keep them. I was like, I hope so.
the, the
Otherwise,
black the
Aunt
black
Veho
market is
will take them.
not good enough. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so, Mike, what are the pros and cons of lifestyle, or we could also call it retirement design?
Well, the pros are really obvious for me in terms of flexibility. Like, also the fact that I don't feel I'm really working because I do something that I really love. And a lot of times I tell people, you know what? Right now in my 40s, I don't know what else I would do. Like if I would sell DSR tomorrow morning, I really don't know what I would do. I would probably just start another business the same day. Like cuz I would have like too much energy, too much time, and even though I have like 10 passions, it's not going to take enough time. And as you mentioned, the other problem I see is all my friends would still be waking up early in the morning, going to work, and not being available for me. Like if I want to do, like if I want to hike a mountain in the middle of the week, I would be hiking alone. So that's not
Hmm.
really good. The other thing as well that I took from the 4 hour work week, which I think is really interesting, is the concept of mini retirement. So instead of like going for fire right away or waiting at the age of like 65 to retire, you can decide to take those like a few days, a few weeks, sometimes a few months if, within the year. And we see that employers are a lot more flexible with the time and the income that you can make and the hours you can work on. So you could decide that every 2 years you take like a month off or 2 months off to do kind of some kind of like a short trip that will look a lot like your mini retirement, but it's not for a long period of time. So you can save for
Hmm.
2 years. That gives you like goals, objectives, and then you take off for 2 months, and then you come back to work and you do that. So having this flexibility, I think, it's the most important part. On the other side, among the disadvantage, I would say it is obvious it's hard to reach. It's hard to reach, but not for the reasons that you may think. It is mostly due to mental barriers. We think in general that a lot of things are impossible or that we cannot do them or it's not for us. And I remember that I had that argument so many times that, oh, you're lucky, you're working 4 days a week, but I cannot do that at my job because my boss would not allow it. I mean, I was a private banker in the financial industry. Usually you get killed for doing that kind of thing. When I moved and I got that promotion, actually, Caleb was just born. And then I told during my interview, yeah, I'm taking my parental leave and I will not be available in February, neither March. I'm going to be available in April. And so many people told me, you cannot say that. Like, it's impossible. You're never going to get the job. Like, they're going to take somebody else. And then on top of that, in the same interview, I said, you're going to pay me for 37 and a half hours, which was a full week of pay, but I'm going to work 30. And this is how it's going to happen because I'm going to bring a lot more like results than most private bankers. And of course, it takes a lot of guts to say that, but I was doing this as a financial planner and I was like one of the best one because I knew that by using Pareto principles, like focusing on a 20% that really brings 80% of the business, 80% of the results, by being highly efficient and by caring about people, I would bring a lot more money in. And this is what I did. So for 5 years, the bank paid me for 5 days a week. I was working 4 days a week, actually working 1 day on DSR during that time. And everybody was happy. I mean, my boss was like, you know what? As long as you beat your objective every year, I don't really care what you do. And as long as all your clients are super happy and they can reach you, because of course I was on the other side, I was a bit extremist maybe, but my client had my personal cell phone and they could reach me at night. They could reach me during the weekends. They could reach me during the holidays or even when I was in vacation. And you know what? In 5 years, I think I got 2 phone calls. So that was really worth it to tell all my clients whenever you want, you pick up that number. That's not the bank's number. That's my personal number. And I'm going to answer that phone. But it was giving this sentiment that I was there for them, even though people are like, they respected my time off. So they were not going to go there unless there's emergency. So everybody was happy. So those mental barriers are huge. A lot of people are
Mhm.
just thinking, I cannot do that. Well, then when you start really being motivated by this goal, you find solutions. And like I said, it's having a business or trying to negotiate those type of terms with your boss. It's like a game, so different games, different set of rules, but it's not for everyone. Maybe you do not want to play Monopoly and you rather play cards or you rather play Risk, and that's fine. But when you
Mhm.
sit down at a table where the goal is to roll the dice and buy properties, well, if you hate that, that's not just a game for you. So it's important that in the big game of life, you find the place where the rules are good for you and that you enjoy playing that game. Because while you enjoy doing it, well, then you don't necessarily have to retire or you don't have to think about that and just enjoy life today instead of like thinking about when you will be able to enjoy it.
Mike, after all these years helping investors and retirees, we found a way to create a dividend income for life, and you will share this in our upcoming public webinar. So let's pause the episode a bit and invite you, listeners, to this special event. We will hold a live webinar on Thursday, November 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. What will attendees learn, Mike?
Well, first, as a dividend investor, you just want to live off your dividend and enjoy your retirement. That's the ultimate dream. However, there is a big problem with dividend investing, and a lot of investors are blinded by the yield. So, we're going to talk about that. We're going to tackle the dividend myth. And I'm also going to offer you a different way to see how you can structure your portfolio with high quality company that will not fail you, and there you can still create that dividend from your portfolio. This is why we call it dividend income for life. We did that webinar last year to celebrate our 10 years anniversary at DSR. We had over 2,000 investors that watched that webinar. So I'm expecting a lot of questions for the Q&A. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I want to see you there on November 28th. And of course, if you register and you cannot attend, you will receive the replay.
So, like you said, Mike, after the presentation, we will stay around for a 1 hour Q&A session. This is your chance to ask Mike your questions and get straight answers. Of course, the webinar comes with some freebies and I'll be in the chat to assist you. So save your spot now for the live session or to get the free replay at thedividendguyblog.com/webinar. Again, Thursday, November 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Create a dividend income for life at thedividendguyblog.com/webinar. And you know what, Mike? This is exactly what I did myself too, because I had a good job before working for you, and then I wanted to have more flexibility, and you were very open to that, and it was. I mean, the finance part and investment part was not in my background, but the rest of my job, it was pretty much in line with what I wanted to do. So anyway, it's possible to just like keep on working and get more money and still be happy and have some flexibility. So anyway, just a
Yeah.
thought. And I mean, it's kind of an introduction for my next question also, because there are as many lifestyle designs as people who choose them. So do you have some guidelines to help people define their own retirement design?
The best guideline is you're going to die. And once you realize, I mean, yeah, but it's blunt, but it's true. We all are going to die. And I always try to look back at the past year, the past 5 years, the past 10 years. And my question is always, if I have to die tomorrow, am I happy with the time that I got and what I did with it? And whenever I'm not too convinced about the answer I'm giving myself, then I sit down and I try to redesign what I'm doing. And and that's the whole part. So if you're happy this way, you could retire whenever you want. That doesn't matter anymore. So for people that wants to reach fire and they enjoy, because you can see that as a game, a lot of people are just like, yeah, I was able to save that much on this thing and that thing, and then I'm like making up my own soap or whatever, and they love that game they play. They love those rules, and they get rewarded throughout their journey So it's not for everyone, but they're having a lot of fun doing it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
perfect for them. So it's really, are you proud? Are you happy about what you just did over the past? And now we're coming up to the end of 24. So it's a good time for this type of reflection. What have you done in 24? Like, you had a full year, so don't get with some excuses. We all had the same number of days, some number of months. So it's all about what have you done with those. And if you're not happy, that's okay too. But then you have to change something else for 2025.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Mike, because we are the Dividend Guy blog podcast, I need to ask, is there any investment type that will better help investors reach their lifestyle goals?
I think that there are as many plans and strategies that are types of retirement. The key is to have a clear strategy and to stick to it. It's not. It's that simple. You can do, as long as you are a steady investor, meaning that you invest according to your plan. So every 2 weeks, every month, whatever, you put money aside. You invest in the same strategy over and over again. You don't doubt. You don't sell. You don't spend like 6 months thinking, oh, there was election, now it's something else, we're going to have a recession, oh no, we're not going to have one, there's going to be a war. Or, well, if you just invest and you follow the same strategy, it's going to work out. I mean, the whole point here is, when you're thinking about retirement planning, you have control over how much you save. You have control of for how long you save it, and then you have control of how much you want to withdraw. So those are like basic math, but if you make them around, you invest as soon as you can. You always invest in the same strategy, so that's going to eventually generate some returns, and then you control your spending, and then you go boom, you're up for retirement.
Okay, Mike, I'm curious. So let's end with this. What is your plan?
I actually have three plans. So do you have half an hour? So I have like kind of like a plan A, which is like my dream retirement, my dream life. I have a plan B, and then I have a plan C. So I just want to make sure that I'm fully covered everywhere. So the plan A is I keep working as long as I have my two ends in my brain, and I give all my money to my children, because I really see myself, like the person that edits our newsletter at DSR, Dick,
Mhm.
he's over 80 years old. I mean, the guy, he used to be like a VP finance in the steel business. He definitely doesn't need any money, but he just enjoys doing it. So I can see myself like this. Like, and what he enjoys the most is to talk about his family, enjoy time with his children and grandchildren. So that would be my plan A. The plan B, because you never know if you're going to always love what you do, is eventually I sell the business. So if I'm getting tired at one point, or I don't like to do what I do right now, maybe I could sell when I'm 50 or 55, and then I would get a big fat check. So that would be cool too. But if I don't like today, that would be really a B plan, not an A plan. And then plan C, because I mean, it doesn't mean that DSR is always going to be amazing and I'm always going to have fun with it. So maybe the business is just going to die. And I have to be prepared for that too, because that's
Mhm.
also something that could happen. So the financial planner in me made sure that I have enough money so I could still go the classic route of retiring in my 60s, having a few $1 million on the side, and live a classic retirement. So I did like some usual projections at 6.57%. I'm always invested in the stock market, so 100% equities. And that's pretty much how I envision my worst case scenario. And of course, then there could be a plan D where there's the end of the world. But then I already have my two dogs, so I'm going to be happy. So, I may want to add on this note that a lot of people will think that running a business is risky. I hear that all the time. It's like, yeah, but it's different. If you have a business, you're taking on more risk. And I actually argue it's quite the opposite, because if there's one thing, I have 100% of the knowledge of how the business is doing, and I also have 100% of control of where I want to bring the business. When you work for someone, you're the last person that you're gonna know that you're gonna get fired. Like, you won't know in advance. So I would say that it's not necessarily, it's different. The games is different. It's like literally like playing Risk or playing Monopoly or playing cards. different set of games, this different set of rules, but it's not necessarily more risky or less risky. It's just a different game.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
the important part here is fire or not, business or not, find the place where you enjoy the rules of the game, and then you're just going to be happy.
I just wanted to add because you've said as long as you got your two hands and your brain, but you're ready to let go of your legs and you're a runner. So that kind of surprised me.
I don't need them to work, right? So
Okay,
I
I
guess
just
I'll
wanted
eventually
to.
have to stop running and I'll have to find another sport. Maybe I'm going to like swim or something, or I'm going to drown because I'm not that good of a swimmer. But that's another story.
All right. So thank you, Mike, for sharing your thoughts about the FIRE movement and how people can design their lifestyle. Listeners, to identify the strategy that best suits your needs, download your free DSR portfolio workbook at thedividendguyblog.com/workbook. You can also save your spot to our next webinar at thedividendguyblog.com/webinar. We will discuss dividend income for life. For the show notes and related content, visit thedividendguyblog.com/202. Next week, we'll explain a big problem with dividend investing. Hit pause and subscribe to the show now so as not to miss it. You may as well leave us a 5-star rating while you're there. Until then,
Stay invested. Hey, fellow investors, it's Mike here. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Please note that the Dividend Guy Blog podcast is at no time issuing buy or sell recommendation. Please do your own due diligence as this podcast is recorded for information and hopefully fun purposes only. Make your research. Make sure you do your stuff. We're not responsible for your losses or your profit after listening to this episode. And until next one, stay invested.